Hello and welcome to this channel. Good morning, good evening. Here it's evening. It's about 8:05 p.m. and the reason as to I'm making this video is I just wanted to share some challenges. You know, here in this channel we do face a lot of challenges, and especially maintenance, trucking, and I try as much as I can to share with you those challenges and how to overcome them or how to resolve them. So today I have a challenge where my air compressor, I think it went out, and one of the ways that I knew I had a problem is the truck kept throwing the code of low coolant, and every time I got there onto the reservoir there was low coolant. So what I'll do is I'll explain what happened, then I'll go and show you. And every time the coolant gets the sensor or gets below the sensor, when the sensor cannot fill the coolant, it always throws out a code of low coolant and a secondary light that is engine protection. So what those two lights do is it lets you know that the coolant is low, and then the second light is if you continue driving, the truck will automatically shut down. So that happened one time. I was in New Jersey, so I picked the load in New Jersey yesterday, and that did happen. So I would go try and add more coolant, and obviously as soon as I opened the reservoir there was so much pressure that I felt sucked all the coolant down. And then as soon as I opened the cap, you should not open that cap when it's really hot, but what I would do, I would turn off the truck and I would gradually just loosen it, and as soon as I hear the heating coming out from the cap, then I'll kind of let it sit there for a little bit, kind of cool off that pressure, and then when I notice that it's going down, then I'll open some more and watch the pressure, you know, come out. So every time I was doing that, you know, I kept adding more water. At first I would add more coolant, but then as time went on I kept adding at a much higher frequency. So I needed to know what was happening. Every day you should drain your tanks, and one of the reasons why you should drain your tanks is there's a lot of condensation when the air leaves the tanks at a high pressure. Just like a container, whenever the air leaves at a high volume, the condensation forms on the inside, and sometimes if you shake that container, you can feel that there's water in there even after you have exhausted all the product that was in the container. So what I did is I usually do drain the air tanks at the end of the day, and I noticed that one of the tanks, the primary tank, which is separated into two, it has a lot of water coming out of it, and it's a lot and the water is very milky, and that got my attention, because usually whenever you have no problems, you will drain those tanks and only air and sometimes a little water. So what I'll do, I'll go and show you exactly what I mean and explain to you how losing air compressor, something that deals with air, somehow leads to you having less coolant. So let me show you. I'll just go ahead and pop the hood and then I'll come back. So here, this is the sensor, and you have your markings right here, maximum and minimum. So what I would do, I would just gingerly open this cap until I hear. So what I'll show you is this is the compressor, and one of the things that the compressor does, it compresses air, and that air we use it for 1, suspension, 2, braking, and that is primarily, unless I'm missing another point, those are the two primary functions that the air compressor does. So one of the ways that the compressor gets cooled down, well, the compressor, I think from talking to a mechanic, is it has oil and coolant going through it. The oil is for lubrication because it's gear driven, and since it's gear driven, it gets hot, and like everything that gets hot, it needs to be lubricated, and that lubrication comes from the oil. So the compressor has a component that uses oil. A second component is it has to be cooled. So besides the lubrication, it has to be cooled. So I'm thinking the compressor also has a second component that brings in oil. One of the ways we separate those parts is by having gaskets. Gaskets ensure that the oil or coolant is not leaking where it's not supposed to be. Even in the engine, you have gaskets. So I'm thinking my compressor, either one of the gaskets that separates that is meant to keep the coolant out of the compressor, I think it has failed, or because I have now lost, I keep having good air, I keep building air the right way, so I do not have a problem. My parts valve, it keeps working great, but the only problem that I have is I keep losing coolant into the tank. So I'll try and show you guys how the normal tank is supposed to, once you pull this right here, these are the release, the drain, I don't know what to call them. These are used to drain the tanks generally. So this is for the one that has a problem, and this, I think, is the secondary one that doesn't have a problem. So the tanks are sometimes separated. You can have one tank that is separated in the middle. So I'll show you one that is generally it has just a bit of moisture, and that's very normal. And then I'll release the one that keeps on getting the coolant from the compressor. So first here, I'll pull the one that has no problem so that you guys can see. There's barely anything. What I'll do, let me get a flashlight so that I can show you. And that was just generally how it's supposed to be. So let's see here. So this is my breather right there, my breather pipe. So I'll do the one that I think has normal behavior, and I hope this flashlight is really challenging because I'm using one arm. All right, there, I think we have good visual. So normal, right? Normal, no issues, everything's looking good. But now let me release the one that I think has a lot of moisture, I mean coolant. That is a lot. And there's still more. You can see that is a lot of coolant. And all that coolant coming out right here, all the way back there. And ladies and gentlemen, that is our problem. So this coolant, well, it's water right now because it kept on draining, so I was not gonna spend that much money just putting coolant that's just gonna go to waste. Is just right on the edge right here, you know. And this is the compressor. Usually whenever compressors fail, they usually start having oil leaks, and especially they have oil leaks on the compressor, or they start passing the oil from the compressor all the way to the air dryer. And as you can see, well, I think it's been giving me signs because that's a bit of oil, but the air dryer, I mean, as long as I've had this truck, I've always had just a little bit of oil, even when the compressor was new. So I'm not sure whether it was faulty from the beginning, but it's been 2 years and it's always just worked fine. I never lost enough oil to show up on the dipstick. So I'm gonna get the mechanic to come and look at it tomorrow. Hopefully it's gonna be, the compressor usually doesn't have a lot of pieces. It's just a couple bolts. I don't know if you can see it. It's just a couple bolts that need to be taken off, and it's right here. These bolts right here, right there, and 2, 3, I think there's like 5 or 6. So there's a couple bolts on the other side that I don't think you can see quite clearly. But this is the compressor, and this right here is the air governor. So this is the one that tells the air compressor how much air to put into the tanks. But anyway, we're gonna stop here for now, and what I'll do tomorrow, I'll come back, buy the compressor. Hopefully, if the compressor is good, I only need a gasket, but if the compressor is not good, then we'll just buy a whole new compressor. Until then, see you then. Bye.